Chapter 24, The New Era. The New Economy. There was an economic boom, primarily because of technology and industrial expansion. The automobile industry stimulates growth in other industries. There were improvements in radio, leading to millions of people having radio sets. There was an increase in commercial travel, as well as other forms of power. There were improvements with early computers, genetic research with Gregor Mendel. Some industries like steel consolidate, leading to new forms of divisional organization. This makes it easier to control subsidiaries and expand further. Other industries stabilize through cooperation, including trade associations in which members encourage coordination in production and marketing. However, there was a maldistribution of wealth. There was a large lower class, although there was an increased standard of living for workers. There was what was called welfare capitalism, in which some employers give workers benefits to curb labor unrest and the growth of unions. However, there was still little improvement. Employers were still interested in minimizing labor costs. Workers still are impoverished and powerless. Labor organizations didn't adapt to the changing economy. The American Federation of Labor had no provision for industrial workers. There were women in pink-collar jobs that were low-paying service occupations. Women and African Americans were not wanted in unions, except for the Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters, which was African American, led by A. Philip Randolph. They wanted higher wages, shorter hours, etc. In the West and the Southwest, the unskilled workers included Japanese, Filipinos, and Mexicans. Corporations said the unions were subversive, so this led to the protection of the open shop, in which no worker could be required to join a union. The so-called American plan was the crusade for the open shop, but in reality it was a pretext for union busting. In agriculture, developments included the combustion engine, tractors, hybrid corn, fertilizer, pesticide, etc. This led to an increase in productivity, leading to a surplus, declining prices, and a drop in income. So they wanted to use parity, which means setting prices for goods so farmers didn't lose money. This was enacted through the McNary-Haugen Bill. However, this bill was vetoed by Calvin Coolidge, the president at the time. The new culture. There was growing mass consumption of leisure items, particularly the automobile. So the automobile provided the ability to travel farther in less time and allowed for an escape from urban life, which led to suburbs. There was an increase in vacations and the development of a youth culture because of the automobile. With the spread of advertising and mass circulation of newspapers and magazines, there were standards on the film industry. However, with the emergence of radio, there was that was less controlled than the film industry and was more controversial at times. Modernist religion wanted to abandon traditional aspects to lead more fulfilling lives. This led to less time spent in worship. Women were increasingly obtaining a college education. However, they were still limited to female professions and the home. There's an emerging idea called behaviorism, in which women should take mothering advice from doctors, nurses, and educators rather than from their own instinct. This was less emotionally fulfilling for them. However, there was an increased development of companionate marriages with their husbands, as well as birth control. Also with women, there was the flapper image of the liberated modern woman. However, they were still dependent on men. Feminists continued their crusade for reform. So there was the League of Women Voters and Female Consumer Groups. The Shepard-Towner Act provided federal money for states to provide prenatal and child health care. However, there was opposition from Alice Paul, Margaret Sanger, who supported birth control, and the American Medical Association, whose programs ended in 1929. The importance of education increases. There's a higher attendance rates in schools and the development of a youth culture. The idea of the self-made man is on the decline, and the idea that education and training is needed for success increases. There is a dependence on rules and norms of bureaucracy. These people who were becoming disillusioned by the self-made man idea found their identity in Henry Ford, Thomas Edison, and Charles Lindbergh, who completed the first solo flight across the Atlantic Ocean. So with this disenchantment brings isolation and personal fulfillment rather than influence and reforming society. The so-called lost generation said that nothing had been gained from the war. Ernest Hemingway wrote A Farewell to Arms. He was one of the lost generations. Sinclair Lewis criticized aspects of modern society. The lost generation provides savage critiques of modern society. Another such lost generation is H. L. Mencken, who ridiculed the middle class. F. Scott Fitzgerald rejects the idea of success in his book The Great Gatsby. And then, regarding African Americans, again, we have the Harlem Renaissance, which is the African American cultural and artistic movement to demonstrate their racial heritage. Langston Hughes, in particular, writes, "I am a Negro" in Beautiful. A conflict of cultures. Prohibition, also known as the Noble Experiment, reduces drinking in some areas, but there are growing violations. There is an increasing illegal lucrative industry. Al Capone built an entire empire based on illegal alcohol. There is a conflict between the opponents of Prohibition, known as wets, and the supporters of Prohibition, known as dries. So there is a repeal of the 18th Amendment, which had enacted Prohibition in 1933. The nativists thought that immigration equals radicalism, so they imposed restrictions on immigration, such as the National Origins Act of 1924, which bans immigration from East Asia and reduces the percent of European immigration. The new Ku Klux Klan devotes itself to purging America of impure alien influences, sometimes resorting to terrorism and violence to defend traditional values against a modern society. However, the new Ku Klux Klan declined quickly after internal power struggles and scandals. It was dead by World War II. Then we get a religious debate. The modernists adapt their religion to scientific teachings and modern society, whereas the fundamentalists fight to maintain centrality of religion in American life. Evangelical Billy Sunday leads revival meetings to spread his doctrine. Some demand legislation not to teach evolution in schools, so this leads to the Scopes monkey trial, in which teacher John Scopes is on trial for teaching evolution in schools. This leads to a countrywide debate on the issue. Within the Democratic Party, there are tensions between interest groups. Al Smith gains the Democratic Party nomination, though he doesn't unite the party. His Republican opponent, Herbert Hoover, personifies the middle-class society and wins the election of 1928. Back to 1920, Harding got the Republican nomination from the agreement within the party. However, he was unfit for rule and gave positions to those that helped him be successful, which leads to corruption and scandal within his administration. Harding dies of a heart attack, and Calvin Coolidge succeeds him. He says the government should interfere as little as possible. The federal government works to help business and industry achieve maximum efficiency and productivity. He also helps cut the federal budget. Andrew Mellon helps get substantial reductions in corporate and personal taxes. Within Coolidge's cabinet is the Commerce Secretary, which is Herbert Hoover at the time, who believes in associationalism, in which trade associations in particular industries help stabilize and promote efficiency. In 1928, Hoover is elected to the presidency, promising efforts to solve economic problems. However, less than a year later, there is a prolonged economic crisis, also known as the Great Depression, would begin. That's what we'll discuss next time.